Here we have a Dyson V10. I'm gonna show you how to open up and disassemble it so you can clean it. So first of all, you're gonna have to remove the filter. Most of you guys will probably already know how to do that. So just turn it a bit and you can remove it. Next, we're going to remove the battery. There's 3 screws holding the battery down, 1 here and 2 here. These are Phillips head screwdrivers, or screws. Please note the battery for the V11 does not fit in the V10 due to the plastic layout has been changed. It does fit in the same slot, but the trigger blocks it from fitting in. So if you want to use a Dyson V11 battery, you need to change the trigger as well to Dyson V11. So now that we've finished removing the 3 screws, you just take your battery out and you just put your battery back in like that. Next, we're going to remove the bin. So to remove the bin, you open this part, you pull on this red tab, you pull around here, it stops. There's a red button down here for you to press. So here's the red button for you to remove the whole bin. Please note, if your bin flies off when you empty the bin, it means your bin stopper is broken. So next, we're going to remove the rubber seals. So we're going to remove the outside one first. We're going to need a flathead screwdriver or a prying tool for us to pry out the rubber outer ring. So I'm going to shove my prying tool in, pull on it a bit so it can come over the edge. Once it's come over the edge, please note it's rubber. So it's like a rubber band, not as elastic as a rubber band, but you just stretch it and pull it, and it should be fine for you to remove. So here you go. Please note the bottom is flat, and the bottom here is also flat as well. So to put it back in, you just align it, the bottom of it flat, and then stretch it over the top. Please note your bin for the V10 doesn't work for the V11. Because they made slight adjustments to the plastic, so it won't fit in. Now that once we got the ring in, we need to adjust on it and ensure that it's placed in correctly, as when we stretch it to pull it back in and to take it out, some places might be more compressed and some places might be more stretched. So it's recommended you go around and check it out if it's aligned correctly. So here there's actually a gap. By inspecting it, I can see there's a gap, so I need to go and do some stretching and compressing on some sides so it can close in properly. Cool. Remember to look at it again to ensure there's no gaps or holes, because if there is, you won't be able to close your lid properly. You also need to close your lid to confirm that the seal is sealing correctly. So go around the edges to see if the seal is actually touching the edges. If it's not, you might have to readjust your rubber ring. So for the middle rubber ring, do not remove it. Since I'm doing a demonstration, I'll show you. I'm just pointing out the bottom line, so you need to know how deep it goes inside. So when you return it, you need to make sure it goes back like that. If you remove it, you're going to regret it, because most likely you're not going to be able to put it back in properly. So first of all, when you take it off, you just put it back in. You don't want to push it in too hard, as you need to go around the whole thing slowly, inch by inch down. Now I'm just inspecting the sides, and there's still a gap, therefore I need to push it down further. So I'm just going to get my prying tool, as it's easier to push it down with my prying tool. Yes, my prying tool I'm currently using is a guitar pick like product. I don't recommend you use a screwdriver, as you might puncture holes in the rubber. I need to stand up. As you can see, I'm actually putting a lot of pressure down to push it down that slightly further. If you do not put this in properly or all the way in, you won't be able to close the lid, or the lid will be extremely loose, and once you like knock your vacuum cleaner or something, it will just open automatically. So you need to go around the edges slowly and push it down so it reaches that original level. So this is why you should look at the original level first before you continue, so you make sure you know where it should go back down in. Don't push down one side too quickly, because if you push one side too quickly, it stretches it, and it's really hard to make it all uniform when you go around. Now that I've finished, I just need to test if it fits around the vacuum cleaner properly. So it's recommended after you do this, you put it back on your vacuum cleaner to ensure that it's like normal. If it closes and opens like normal, it means that you're successful. But if there's a problem with it, means you have screwed up and you need to alter it. Next, we're going to remove this ring, and you need a Torque T8 screwdriver to remove it, and there's one screw. This is the part where it's different. So for your V10 and V11, they made this plastic ring different. That's why you can't fit the V10 on the V11 and the V11 on the V10 due to this area. Just showing you that's a T8 screwdriver. After we remove the tool, the screw, you're gonna need to get something to lift up these notches. So there's grooves in the plastic, so it can clip in. So what we need to do is we need something to lift them up so we can drag it out. So I'm actually going to use my guitar pick and insert it into those grooves. This way I can lift up the notches and then hopefully sliding it out without it stopping in the groove. I'm just pointing out here, as you can see the groove. I'm actually putting the guitar pick right next to it so it can lift it up, so I can actually slide over it. So there you go. So to put it back in, you need to put it back in diagonally. So next, we're going to need a flathead screwdriver to poke this hole here. You need to poke it quite deep so you can lift up the ring. I'm just showing you how deep you have to go. It goes in about that deep. So you don't want to go diagonally or anything, you just want to go straight in. And then once you go in enough, then you start going around, lift it up. Please be careful at this part, as you can actually break the plastic tabs that hold the ring down. I've seen it happen before. It's unlikely, but this is why you have to go around carefully. Now that we remove the ring, we can remove the inner red ring. On the inner red ring, there's actually grooves on it. These grooves need to align with the bottom cutouts. If you don't align them, you won't be able to close it properly. There's also a cutout here. This is where you need to align it with, it's actually aligned with the screw hole of the bottom piece. So how to put this back together, you need to align your cutouts with your grooves. Once aligned, give it a little wiggle to confirm. You want to place this on top and align it correctly with the gap, Now you need to lift up the inner red ring, and the reason to that is because there's also grooves on the top part, which is here. So you need to make sure it goes in. If it doesn't go in, it doesn't allow you to close the ring properly. So what you do is align it, make sure it's correctly, put the ring on top, you lift up the red ring slightly so it goes into the top groove, and then you push it down to the bottom ring. Once one side is in, all the sides should follow soon. So you don't have to, you just need to hold one side to ensure it's aligned correctly, because once it's aligned correctly, all the rest should be aligned. Now that it's closed, we have to put it back, and to put it back you have to put the screw hole part in first. So you line the screw hole and it goes in diagonally like this, and you can just slap it in to push it in. There you go. Now we have to put our screw back in, which is a Torque T8 screw. Now that we're done, we're going to move on to the cyclone part and the filter part. To remove this, you need to remove these 4 screws on the back, plus 2 screws on the bin rail. You're going to need a long screwdriver for this, and it can't have connecting pieces. This screw here, you can use any normal Phillips head screwdriver, but for the other 4 screws it needs to be long so it can go into deep. So next part is here. This part you're going to need a long screwdriver. If you use a screwdriver set, the screwdriver set won't fit into the hole. So it needs to be this long. Without being interrupted, or else you won't be able to reach the screw to unscrew the screws. Now that we remove the screws, you just pull it out and it comes off. Please note, there's actually rails on the guide rails on the unit that you need to slide the filter or the cyclone head part in. So you need to slide this part in. Please note your filter will not work for your Dyson V11, as they actually adjust the size of it so it won't fit properly. This is the same with your V10. You can't switch your V10 with your V11 parts due to the difference. Next, to remove this, we're going to remove the bin rail, which uses a Torque T8 screw. Just showing you that's a Torque T8. You might not be able to see it, but you can trust me, that's a Torque T8. So when you remove this screw, it doesn't really come out unless you push it out. So it actually stays on the bin rail. Next, we need to remove the 4 screws holding the top part of this, or the top end of this cyclone part or filter part down. These also use Torque T8 screws. Now that we removed the screws, we can remove the top. I'm just showing you how to put it back in. When you put it back in, remember to align the screw holes with the screw holes on the bottom half. You can see there's 4 circles or whatever the screw holes are, and you need to align it back to put it back in place. Next, we need to remove the connector. Removing the connector is actually quite difficult. There's another video on my channel showing you how to remove the connector. But for now, if you want to watch this, we need a long screwdriver. We need to place the screwdriver between the inside and the connector, but on the bottom, the inner side part, not the top part. This way, we push the connector away from the clips, you can say. There's actually protrusions inside there that stops the connector from falling out. We want it to angle it away from that so that we can push the connector out. So now that I have placed my screwdriver properly, so I can push the connector diagonally. So we need to push the screwdriver to that direction, and there's a reason. It's so that the connector, we can angle the connector to the right area. Next, we need to put it like this, hang it on a side. Remember to put pressure on your screwdriver so that it pushes the connector outwards or inwards, whatever way you want to call it, but it needs to make sure it's diagonal so that now we can push the connector out from the top. To push the connector out of the top, I'm using my pliers. I recommend you to use chopsticks, as in chopsticks are quite useful. Since I didn't have chopsticks in front of me, I'm just using my pliers and my hammer. So that my screwdriver fell out. Now I have to put it back in place properly again. Now that I have angled it correctly and put it in place, I'm going to use my pliers, as it's a good size compared to the connector. So I just need to put it on top. You just need anything that allows you to hammer the connector out. So I put it on top of my connector, then I knock it down slightly. Correct yourself. You don't have to hit it hard. If you angled your screwdriver correctly, it should. Now that it's out properly, I need to put my screwdriver back in and angle it again, as there's basically 2 stages. Afterwards, you'll be able to see why there's 2 stages. So now that my connector is a lot deeper, I need a different tool. So I don't have chopsticks on me, but chopsticks would be great if you had it, because chopsticks would have went all the way, you wouldn't have to change. So I'm just using something that can fit in the hole and allows me to hammer. Just to show you, the connector has gone down a lot more than it was before. Now that it has reached this level, I don't need the screwdriver to angle it anymore, as it's past that point. So this piece got stuck, so this is why I recommend you to use chopsticks, as chopsticks are small and sturdy enough for you to remove the connector. So here we go, here's the connector. If you see, this is where the hinge is. So what you need to do is you need to get the screwdriver and place it between the connector and the inner side part, so we can push it to our side so we can remove the connector. So here we need to remove the rubber piece on the top. You can just pull it out. To put it back on, there is actually a cutout here, so your rubber ring also has that place for that cutout to go. So you just stretch it and put it in place. Once you stretch it and put it in place and go around, remember to go around again and pull on it so it can fit in properly, as when you're stretching it, some places are stretched more and some places are not, so it makes it uneven. So that's why it's recommended after you put it in, remember to go around again. So here's the connector. Can you see there's a hinge here? So you can open the hinge here. This is why we have two stages, because once it reaches the hinge, there's an area where it can get caught again. That's why I mean there was two stages when you remove the connector. So here in the hinge, there's actually gaps here that holds the pins down. You need to put your pins in properly, or else when you close the door of the hinge, it doesn't hold the pins. If you look here, there's actually shrink wrap. If you never opened your vacuum bleed before, you have to cut that, and there's shrink wrap around this donut thing, or the ring. Once you remove the shrink wrap around both of them, you need to now guide your wire out of the ring. So they just looped it around once. Please note you only can do one string at a time, as two of the strings together are too thick to through the hole. Therefore you have to do it one at a time. So once that's done, you need your torque T8 screwdriver again to remove 3 screws holding the filter part down. Once you remove all your screws, we need to pull the filter out, but here, because this area is recessed in or aligned with the outer filter, it makes it really difficult to remove. So what happens is you need to flip to the opposite side, pull it a bit, so you have tension on this side, and you need to weigh to lift up the filter or detach the filter from the inside part. So what we need to do, we need to shove our screwdriver in. So first we need to put tension on it. Okay. Normally it doesn't come out. Because I've opened mine before, it comes out easier. So what happens here is this box here and this part here they sit flush together. Therefore, when you try to remove it, it's actually really hard. So to put it back, you need to align your holes together, your hole with your hole, and your screw holes with your screw holes. That's how it goes in. Please note that it does have rails, so if you misalign it, it doesn't go in properly. So to demonstrate here, you can see that the square is aligned, But once the square goes over correctly, it actually fits into place, locking it into place. This is going to make it difficult for you to remove. Therefore, you have to put tension on one side. You get your screwdriver inside and you lift this part up so it can slide out correctly. As you can see, the square, it will sit in place, so therefore you need to loosen it somehow, and that's, since mine is open before, it's easier to remove than a virgin one, you will say. Next, we need our Torque T8 screwdriver again to remove 4 screws, holding this to the cyclone part. Now that we remove all the screws, you can just lift it up. Remember to guide your strings through and where your strings go. Your strings go through this little hole here. Make sure it goes into the proper hole, or else it won't show up on the other side. Please note there's a lip inside, so therefore when you shove your cables in, it can get caught on it. Therefore, you might need to use pliers or a screwdriver to push it away from the lip. So to remove this, you just actually pull it apart. If you hold both sides and separate it, it will come off pretty easily. So there's the inner cyclone as well. Remember the inner cyclone also has rails, so you have to put it in properly. So to put it back together, you need to make sure it's actually loose, not tight, because once all the parts come together, then it fits in place. That's why it has to be loose first. So here, there's actually rails here, so that your inner cyclones can actually glide in. You can actually remove the gasket here, the grey one, which is the inner one, and the red one for the outer. Please be careful when you remove this. These are just foam. what happens if you damage them or thing? It means that your vacuum cleaner will lose power as it leaks air from this part. So to put it back, remember to align the empty part with the empty part, or the flat part with the flat part, and then you can push it in slowly. Try to be gentle, as I said before, if you rip it, you actually lose suction power, and it's actually quite annoying. Same with the inner one. Please align it to the bottom before you put it in. Now to put it back, you need to align the hole with the hole. You put it on loosely, you don't have to put it on tight, as long as there's a gap. Then you put your end part. Once you squish it together and align it correctly, it will align and fit properly. So just to demonstrate, so what happens if you put it all together tightly first. So when you put it together, it doesn't go in. It's really difficult. So what you have to do is you need to loosen it up so it has room to move before it fits in together. To put this part back in, we're going to insert your cables through the small hole. Once your cable goes out, you just place on your piece, and we need to put our 4 torque screws back in. Now we need to put our outer filter in. We need to align the hole here with the hole on the other side. Please note the hole here, the outer filter actually has rails for the hole, so you need to align it correctly. That's why I'm actually looking, if you can see the video, I'm tilting it so I can look if my rails are actually aligned. Once aligned, you can actually just push it down and it should click in place. If it clicks in place or looks, and if you look at the square and it looks flush, then that should be right. After that, you need to put your 3 torque T8 screws back in. Now we need to put the top part of it back in. We need to align our we didn't put our cables through the correct hole, so our connector can go through. This is the same thing as well. Inside there's a lip, so it's your cables might be stuck. Before you put your cables in, I actually forgot to put my donut or my ring. It's the ring has a purpose. It's like a noise control. It's to control the electrical noise. As I said previously, with the ring, you need to put one cable in at a time, or else it doesn't fit. Now that we looped our cable through the ring, we can now insert our cable to the top part, so we can put our connector back in. Remember to put your connector in the hinge, or the cables in the connector properly, or else if you stuff up, your attachments actually spin in the incorrect way. So if it spins clockwise, now it spins anti-clockwise, which is actually really annoying. And then you're going to have to open this up again just to recorrect it. So now that my cable's gone through, that's good. So I'm just putting the connector in place again. So please note, so the white one goes on the inside and the black one goes on the outside of the connector. I have a separate video for this, so if you need, once you've done that, you just insert it back in and remember to poke it to ensure that it's actually in place properly. Once you've done that, we need to put our 4 T8 screws back in. Once we've done this, we need to put our bin rail back in, which is also a torque T8 screw. Now I'm just going to show you how to remove the motor and the trigger. So we need to remove this white plastic housing, which is held down by 2 torque T8 screws. Please note, if you have the newer versions of the V10s, there is no point continuing on this step, is because after you remove the white cover or white plastic cover, they actually glue down that area, and for you to continue you're going to have to remove the glue. On the older models they didn't do that. So now that we removed this, we need to pop out the white cover, so we can use our prying tool to lift up the white cover, so detach it from its clips. Once you detach it from its clips, we need to push our connector out. So with our connector, you just actually put force on it and push it inwards and push your white cover out, and the connector should just go inside. So we need to remove this. This is our trigger connector. So we need a Torx T8 screw to remove this. Once we remove these two screws, we can now actually move our motor out. So this is a bit difficult. You're going to need some pliers or something to bend your connector, as the connector is actually blocking the way to take out the motor. So you need to bend your positive and negative cable outwards so we can slide it under the hole and get the motor out. So you need to bend it around 45 degrees. So originally it's at 90, so we need to bend it at 45 so we can remove it. There's also a connector on top here. That is your speed controller. That controls your low, medium, high. After you do that, you can now push your motor out. Please note, if you haven't bent your connector enough, it actually gets in the way. Try not to bend your connector too far, as you can break them. So once it slides out the connector, as you can see, there's a hole here, and we needed to connect the power cables to go through that. Next, we need our Torx T8 screwdriver to remove two of these screws. This area is really small, so you're going to need something that allows you to spin your tip in a small area, or you need a long reach. These are quite easy to remove, so if you can just turn it slightly at the start, you'll be able to use your hands to unscrew the rest. So here, once you loosen the bolts, you can just actually hold the screwdriver tip and remove it yourself. Next, you're going to need a prying tool to pry out the clip. So there's a clip that's holding your positive and negative cables in place. So we need something to remove that cover and clip. So here, this part, you might have to bend your cables even more. Try not to bend it too much. As I said before, you might break it. The reason why is you need to now to push them through that plastic piece that holds it down. This part is a bit difficult, as the hole is quite small compared to all the cables. So here you go, I've removed the plastic thing. As you can see here, there's a hole here. So the one side, it feeds in one side and it goes out the other side, which makes it difficult. Next, we need to remove a torque T8 screw from here. Please note, it's actually quite deep, so you need a long reach T8 screwdriver. So for a few people, if you have trigger problems, it's most likely this screw here is broken and it doesn't hold in place. It actually happens a lot for the Dyson V10, V11, V15. So once we have removed that screw, we need to put our cable straight so we can actually take the trigger and connect it out. So just get your pliers, grab one of the pins for the batteries, align everything straight, and if you pull out slightly hard enough, it should come off like this. Remember, your cables have to fit through this hole, so you might have to bend it a bit straighter, so when you put your connector back in, it comes back out, or your trigger back in, it comes out. Please note, there's actually rails on the inside of the plastic and on the trigger as well, so you need to line them up correctly before you can put the trigger back in. So this does take a bit of time and effort for you to ensure your cables will actually fit through the hole. As you can see here, now my cables are popping out, therefore it's correct. So here you go, you can see my cables have popped through the other side. Remember, your trigger needs to go up properly, so it's recommended you have to push your trigger in all the way. You know it's far enough if there's actually a gap between the trigger and the bottom. There should be a little small gap. If there's no little small gap, then it's not in correctly. I'm just taking it out again to show you the trigger now. So some people always have broken triggers, so you can replace this red trigger, buy them on eBay, by removing the spring first. You just need to lift up one side and it should pop up. Lift up the other side, it comes out like that. Pretty simple. To put it back in, you just put it back in one hinge at a time. It's soft plastic, so you can actually just spread it open and it should fit in place. Remember to put your spring back into place. Just to show you, here's the rails on the trigger. So the rails need to align with the rails on the inside of the plastic. So once it's gone through, you can check it again. Make sure there's a slight gap between your trigger and your grey part. If there's not a slight gap, it means it's not in deep enough. We can put the battery in to see that its gap is closed properly. Please be careful when you put the battery in. If you put the battery in and pull the trigger, you can short circuit the battery. Therefore, when you put it in, make sure you don't pull the trigger. Now to put it back, you need to loop your wires through the hole again. It might be useful to put it in diagonally or put it in sideways, because your connector is facing, or because you bent your connector in a certain way, it makes it easier. Then you can rotate it again afterwards, like I'm doing now. So once it is in place, you push it down and it should clip in. Remember to pull your cables out before you clip it in to make sure that it's out long enough. Once that's done, we need to get our Torque T8 screw to put two of them back in. Remember, you need short ones for this. So you can start off screwing it in by hand first, and only at the end part when you need to tighten it properly. You can tighten it by your equipment. It was actually quite hard to screw in by my hand, since there's tension on it from the strings, as I didn't put the string in like all the way. This happens. This will probably happen to you as well. Because it's not aligned properly, therefore it makes it hard for the screw to go in. But after you screw both the screws in properly, it will align everything. Next, we need to put our motor back in. So to put our motor back in, we need to align the screws to insert them through the hole on the bottom. After you insert them, both the negative and positive cable plus the trigger button goes through the hole. You can push it against the side. It's actually quite helpful if you can rotate your positive and negative cable, so it doesn't face up and down more, but left and right, as the hole is bigger left and right. Remember to get your power button in properly as well, or not your power button, your power setting button that allows you to go high, medium, low. This only happens on the V10 because you have the slider for the power. On the V11 and V15 you got the digital button and you don't get this problem. We need to plug in the connectors back So we need to bend our positive and negative cable back so it fits properly. You might have to use your pliers to bend them back. Be careful, don't bend them too much, as they may break. So instead of bending it back to like 90 degrees, you can bend it back to like 70, and then when you screw it in place, it will cause tension on it, and then it will go back into place properly. So as you can see, I have to use one of my hands to hold the screw down because I did not bend it enough. Please ignore that message popping up. It's actually a T8 screwdriver that you need, not a T10. So once you screw the screw in place, it actually bends the cable back slightly for you, and that should be enough. Just a reminder for those who have the newer V10, you might have this area glued down, covered in glue, so therefore you can't remove the screw. Remember to also plug in your power connector cable, or your power setting cable as well. You didn't have to remove it at the start, as I did, but since this is disassembly, I do show you how to remove it. So I'm just plugging back in the trigger. That's the trigger cable. Now to put back the white thing, we need to insert the black cable through. From the other side, we pull on it. It will click. Once it clicks, you know you've gone further enough. And then now we clip in the white part to the motor. So if you don't align your stuff correctly, it doesn't clip in. We now put our 2 torque T8 screwdrivers back into. After we've done that, we need to put our T8 screw back into the trigger. Please note this is a long screwdriver that you require. You cannot use any screwdriver with like attachments or things like that, because the attachment part makes it too big for you to insert into the hole. With this, you can put the battery back in and the filter back in, just like this, and you can test it still functioning. You don't need any other parts. So it's best to test it's functioning now, so that if there's anything wrong, you can go back, instead of sticking all the parts and then reversing it, making life hard. If everything's everything's working and you're happy, we can now continue to plug all our other stuff in. Now to put everything back in, you need to remove your filter. We're going to get our cyclone and slide it in. Here you go. Remember, there's rails here and here. So when you slide it in, make sure that your cyclone fits inside those. You know if it fits inside if there's no gaps on the side. Now we need to get our, put our 4 screws back in. Remember, you need a long Phillips head screwdriver here.
My hand hurts. Your phone is really heavy.
You need the iPad you carry. It's quite heavy.
This is easier.
What's wrong with it? Emma, you're not straight, Emma.
It is straight.
Sometimes I'm so concerned. Now when you put our bin on, remember that our bin also has rails as well. So we need to slide our bin inside the rails, push it in all the way, close our lid, and we put our filter back on. And you're done. You can test it to see if it works, but we tested before already and know it works.